I'm not in the business of changing people.
Yeah.
You have to be able to set your emotions aside and be extremely logical to be a leader of a business, because people say all the time, a business is a family. If my brother gets addicted to crack cocaine, we're all going to give everything we can to save him. In a business, you get those people out.
Nick, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm excited.
All right, so you've been acquiring businesses for 5 years, 6 years?
Yeah,
When was
5
the
years.
first
4 or 5 years.
Okay. I'm in the process of acquiring my first business.
Yeah.
It's a pretty powerful thing when you have, I want to elaborate on this concept called the trifecta, which is access to talent. You can attract talent, you have access to capital, and you yourself have operational chops. If you know how to run a company, if you have access to talent and you have access to capital, the obvious play then is we're not going to start businesses, we're going to buy businesses.
Yeah.
That's
our playbook. I've been saying from day one that we have 3 pillars. I guess you call it the trifecta. I like that a lot. Great talent, access to capital, and buying great businesses.
Okay.
For us.
So the decision, it's not necessarily operational chops, it's the decision to go after a certain market with the right tailwinds in the right position to be a good business, which is easier to run.
Yeah, because ultimately we don't really run our businesses. My business partner and I, we both have entrepreneurial experience. Like, we've built businesses, we've grown businesses, we've sold businesses, but our companies are run by incredible leaders. That's really the talent piece for us. So we don't really need that operational experience personally as much. But yeah, you know, this journey has been a one of many learnings. And I think the greatest learning that I've had is that of this trifecta, I used to think that all 3 were equal, right? Talent, business, access to capital. What I've learned is that the most important, maybe 2 pieces, are really the great business and the talent, because the capital follows, right? And I think maybe you've experienced this as well. I'd like to hear about that, because when we find a great business and we find a great leader, that's really where the magic happens. That's really where the art is of our business. And you can find a company that can grow, led by someone for a long period of time, that will distribute capital to its investors. You can attract as much money as you want.
There's this part of the ego that many entrepreneurs face where the CEO title of running your own companies, being the boss, it's very eye-opening when you buy a business or you have a plan to buy a business and you have a team in place to run it for you. You're the one taking the risk, but if it goes well, money gets put into your bank account every month. That's something that is so different than the way most people think about entrepreneurship.
To say more about that, I'm curious to hear more.
As an operator, I think, I'm going to go buy a business that I operate. And I think so many people are at that level. I listened to Andrew Wilkinson 3 years ago get on My First Million and say, you hire 1 to hire 20.
Yeah.
And I walked around for 2 weeks thinking, I hire 1 to hire 20. And then I realized it wasn't applicable to me at all, because I was in no position to hire a CEO. I couldn't afford a good CEO. I didn't have a good enough business. There are all these things that were different.
Yeah.
But your world expands, and the time leverage that you have when you can find people to run these companies, it's a level that most people will never reach, but it's insanely powerful.
Tell me a little bit about like when that shift happened to you.
It was a personal cash flow milestone. I think doing business where money hits your bank account every month and you have your living expenses covered, it's on easy mode. As an entrepreneur, for the first 10 years of my career, I never had money I always had anxiety about money.
Yeah.
I was never making enough of it. We'd scrape through. We were a seasonal business. It was never like, oh man, I have enough money coming in to where I don't need to worry about my house payment anymore. Don't need to worry about my personal goals anymore. Now I can start to really invest aggressively, hire ahead of growth, potentially hire a CEO, which is $250,000 to $500,000 a year employee. You have to have personal cash coming in from all sources to feel confident doing that.
That's really interesting, because people talk about raising money so they can afford people, but you're talking about having cash flow so you can have psychological safety and maybe take risks, make investments.
That shift grew me up as an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
From going from making 20 grand a month, and that's it, so when it could go down to 10 because we're entrepreneurs and there's risk here.
Yeah.
You could lose that money. So how can I potentially be in a situation to hire 1 person to hire 10, or hire a CEO to run my company when I'm not making enough money myself as CEO? So if I hired somebody, then I'm down to zero. I got no money coming in. So as soon as I started making real money, this whole concept of hiring the next level of talent, and our friend Matt was telling us, talking about this last night at dinner, that there's just a next level of talent. You guys have found that level when you find it to run your company. But I'm just looking at everything through that lens, and maybe it's because I'm focused on that every, I have a hammer, so every problem looks like a nail now, but it's almost every business owner should kind of think about replacing themselves.
Yeah. What is the level? It doesn't have to be like a specific dollar amount, but for people listening, like some people are thinking, oh, I need $10 million in my bank account before I can start taking those risks. Some people think much bigger. Some people think smaller. Like, what signs can somebody look for in their life to feel comfortable enough to make these kind of
For me, it was about 200 grand a month coming in and about $2 million of liquidity in my checking account.
Yeah.
When I had 200 grand a month coming in, I was making money significantly faster than I could spend it, even after tax. 200K in where you live in California, that's 100K. Then you got 50K to live and invest personally that you want to be saving and doing these things. Maybe you're only spending 20 or 30, but you need 50 coming in. So then you got that extra 50 to play with. And that extra 50K a month is enough to invest in businesses and invest in talent and companies.
Yeah.
So that's about where it was for me.
So about $600,000 a year of cash that you're setting aside that you can invest however you want.
So really, you'd be making double that, because you have family, you have expenses, you have an emergency money that you need to have on hand.
Yeah.
I always like to keep a couple of years of living expenses aside because I'm an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So when I had that cash coming in, I could feel more confident in chasing talent that I'd never thought was possible to hire.
Yeah. And I want to dig into some of the businesses that are working and what you've learned about that talent. But for us, it was less about having monthly cash flow, and it was more about the strategy that we set out when we started. When I first started my first company, it was called Steady Soup. I was just trying to start a business, pay my bills, play some employees, and grow from there.
And most importantly, what we both did in our first business is we learned how to operate a company.
Yeah, exactly. And we've shared a lot of stories of like things we did, tricks we did, how we kept it cheap, how painful it was in those early days. And neither of those businesses were particularly successful given what we do today, but we learned the fundamentals of how to run a business, how to hire people.
And that was worth millions, especially when you accompany that with our reach now and our network and our personal brands and everything else.
Absolutely. So we did those small businesses, or at least, for me and my business partner, he had much larger businesses. We had our first run at doing businesses as an operator, as a CEO, right? We're running the business, we're responsible for everything. And then years later, when we were thinking of enduring ventures, it was really, can we be capital allocators first and foremost, right? We've already been leaders, we've been CEOs, we've done it before. And frankly, there's much better CEOs out there than we are.
That's a mind-blowing thing about what I'm learning too.
Yeah. There needs to be capital to an equation, and there needs to be operators to this equation, right? And we really want to be on the capital side, right? 80-90% of our job is find a great business, connect it with great talent, and invest in it. And because we set out on that strategy first and foremost, we never got bogged down in this idea that we're going to need to run the business. We need to figure out how to cover payroll. We need to figure out the accounting practices. There's somebody else whose job it is, who's much better than us, who does that from day one.
When you're looking for that CEO, I think there's two main skills that I'm looking for in a CEO. What are you looking for? What do you need that CEO to be really good at? If you could boil it down to 1, 2, 3, 4 things, like direct skills. I'm not talking about like, charisma or leadership. I'm talking about like, what do they need to actually do when a company's in the right market, in the right space, it has the runway, it has the cash, it's ready to grow.
Yeah.
What do they need to be spending their time doing that are like really high leverage activities?
Yeah. So the first thing is the type of profile that we look for the CEO. I'm very biased towards picking CEOs who've done this exact job in this exact industry before.
Yep. That's what Buffett, Wilkinson, all these guys say.
Yep. And it has to be company size specific, because I've also made a mistake in the past. I bought a smaller company, let's say 20 million of revenue, and I placed the CEO who had only run a $200 million business before, right? And even though that person was incredible,
bogged it down with overhead.
That's right. There's a disconnect between the size of the business and where it needed to be and the skills of the leader. So the other thing that I've learned on that is not only experience in the space, but experience growing that business from 20 million to 50 million or 100 million is the type of person that I'm really looking for.
Fair.
And then as far as qualities are concerned, like we generally like sales-oriented leaders, people that are going to drive business.
That's one of my two.
Yep. Or think about driving business.
Well, sales is not just driving business. Sales is attracting talent.
Yes.
It's buying from vendors. You sell them. You are, as a CEO, you are selling every single person in your organization and outside of your organization on following you and your mission.
Absolutely.
All the employees want to have a leader that has a great mission. All the customers want to buy from somebody who they trust.
Yep.
So
Absolutely.
sales is life.
Yeah. And the one that I wanted to say before that is actually they think like an owner. This is like the most important thing, right? This is not a person who's coming in and being an effective employee. They are, for us and our businesses, they are the face, they are the name. When somebody calls one of our companies and they want to talk to the president and leader of that company, Sieva, don't exist, right? It's the president and CEO of that business. And we want them to feel like that is who they are, right? We really want them to own that, because when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, like they're the ones who are fighting to keep great employees. They're the ones to find new employees. They're the ones who are finding new business. It's really not up to us, right? So they get to live the ups and downs of that particular business.
I had to shift from thinking no equity for anybody. When I was an operator, I didn't need equity. I needed employees, and it was always complex to bring in people at different parts of my company with equity. So now that I'm attracting CEOs and operators, they all have equity, but I feel like a lot of mistakes I made early were bringing on people, equity in my companies that should not have had equity.
Yeah.
We talk to people now in our network of like, damn, I got these partners that have equity and they're not, I'm carrying their asses.
Yep.
There's a lot of that happens. So it's a totally different skill set is what I'm saying. Like buying a company, installing a CEO is a totally different skill set than thinking like a CEO.
What other kind of qualities or skills are you looking for in your CEOs?
So it's sales.
Yeah.
Because life is sales. They have to have charisma. They have to have energy. They have to have that I don't know what it is about somebody when you walk in the room with them and you just like, okay, I want to follow this person.
Yeah.
I think just there's so many humans are just attracted to people who have energy and excitement, and they act sure of themselves. People want that. You want your boss to act sure of themselves even when things are burning down. Like you need that. And then the other part is being a really good judge of talent. Being a really good judge of, is this person the right person for this job? Can they add value? And the best people at hiring can talk to somebody for 3 or 4 minutes and know if they're the one or not.
Yeah.
But if you don't have experience doing that, you're just going to hire poorly and it crushes an organization.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely true. I mean, talent is going to be the most important part. I probably have 2 smaller ones to add. One that is hopefully just a given, like super high integrity.
Yeah.
Right? Like their integrity is so high and their morals are so high that you're sometimes surprised by it. You're like, whoa, like that little thing that you just brought up doesn't matter at all, but you're clearly standing on the right side of it, you know?
When somebody tells you who they are, listen.
Yes.
The first time.
Right.
A big mistake.
I've made this mistake before, by the way.
One of the biggest mistakes in business is that I have spent a lot of time trying to change people. And people do not generally change unless they want to change. And sometimes they do. And everybody's like, Nick, that's a cruel way to do business. You're really going to fire somebody after they show you one weakness. They're going to mess up one thing. You're going to let them go. You're going to give up on people that quickly. And my answer is, I'm not in the business of changing people.
Right.
I know that there's a 20% chance they're going to change. But as a business owner in the early days, I was like, if I just do more training, if I just help them a little bit more, they're not going to make this mistake again. They're not going to make this mistake again. And I was filling my organization with people who just couldn't make decisions and were messing up over and over and over again. And now I'm not in the business of changing people. I tell it all the time. I'm not in the business of changing people.
Yeah. Just a mantra on your wall.
I get them out.
Yeah.
I get them out. And you have to be able to set your emotions aside and be extremely logical to be a leader of a business, because people say all the time, a business is a family. A family, if my brother gets addicted to crack cocaine, we're all going to give everything we can to save him.
Yeah. That's actually a great example.
But in a business, if somebody's dragging and putting this family at risk, and that happens all the time, that a drug addict will bring everybody in the family down. It'll bankrupt the parents. It'll just tear the people around them apart. But they're family. You have to. In a business, you get those people out.
Right. Right. And you're capital allocator now, right? So your business is doing this over and over and over again. If you have one CEO that you need to coach and you need to work with, and you're spending 50% of your time on it, and they're creating, 10% of your value because you have 10 companies, there's a disconnect there, right? And it creates a big problem for you and your investors.
The one thing that you and I do a little bit differently is that, and this might come back to bite me, but I think that a really talented leader who has shown themselves in a different industry, they can be highly effective in a business that they don't know well. They can surround themselves with experts, and they can do really well in a business that they have no idea how it works. We hired a CEO for one of our companies, Ari Koseg, from the tech venture capital world, crypto basically, to the oldest, sweatiest engineering business that there is.
Right.
And I think he'll do really well, but it's less risky.
Yeah.
And I guess it comes down to risk.
It is. Like, we're underwriting risk ultimately. If somebody has done this exact playbook as a CEO, it's lower risk. If they haven't, it's a little more risk. I think my partner Xavier put this really acutely. He said, there's a higher degree of variance, right? So if you're taking a business that is low variance, where the playbook is well known, then you want to place someone who's done that before. If you're running a business that has a higher degree of variance, you may want your CEO to have a higher degree of variability, right?
And I guess we are innovating a lot more inside of our companies. They're startups. We have no capital stack risk. Like, the worst case scenario is that profits drop for a little while. We don't have debt. We don't have investors even in these businesses. So that allows me to take a little bit more risk. And honestly, we're changing a lot. Like, we're doing a lot of things different in some of these companies. Like the cost seg business, we're revamping where our workforce is in the world, and we're doing site visits totally different. So an old school, person who has grown one of these businesses maybe is not going to be a fit.
Do you worry that your competitors are hearing how well you're doing with cost seg? You're tweeting about it, you're posting about it on email, you're telling people where you hire your folks. Are you worried that your competitors are going to slide in and start competing?
It's a hard business. What you see on the internet from entrepreneurs, from influencers, from everybody is the rosy picture. There is a ton of struggle that comes along with this business. The margins are not as good as people think. The talent's harder to find. The talent's harder to recruit. So yeah, absolutely. Like, competitive risk is there.
You make it seem so easy.
It's not easy. I think as soon as people get started, they realize that.
Yeah.
If I didn't have the distribution that I have, I wouldn't have started a cost seg firm. It's brutal. It's hard.
Okay. Talk to me a little bit about cash flow. So you have, let's call it 10 businesses that generate good cash flow. How do you think about the competing needs of a CEO that wants more cash to grow their business or hire more people versus pulling out cash and maybe reinvesting in other activities?
I think you can have both. None of my businesses sell a product. None of my businesses require CapEx. They're all, people do work, humans do work. We're selling services. People do work and get money for that work from clients. So you can grow phenomenally well, especially when you have low or negative customer acquisition costs because of my distribution. You can have both.
Yeah.
Like, some of these businesses have been highly profitable from day one, and they've grown way faster than companies who have raised venture capital money.
Yeah.
So I am very motivated by money into my bank account, but I'm also not afraid to grow and invest. I think I've hired a couple operators at some of my businesses who have a scarcity mindset that every dollar I spend on payroll is one less dollar or 40 cents less that's going in my pocket. I'm encouraging them, hey, we need to hire 4 people. And they're like, no, wait, we don't have 4 times the work. I'm like, I can crank up the leads as soon as you want them and need them. We have to hire ahead of revenue. And hiring ahead of revenue is uncomfortable. It is a near-term negative on cash flow. So there's constant balancing act. How do you think about it?
I've really fallen in love with this book called Profit First. Have you read it?
I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah. It's a book that could probably be a blog post, if you read maybe like 1,000 words on it.
What's the main concept?
The main concept is that most entrepreneurs are stuck in this mindset of every dollar I create, I need to be reinvesting, paying people, consultants, growing this business. They're stuck in that mindset because they are hoping to make money one day, right? They're saying, I'm not going to make a penny for the first 5 years so that I can be rich in year 8. The challenge with that is that you are more likely to misappropriate funds when you have too many of them, right? They are automatically assuming that for every $100 they make, if they reinvest those $100, that is the most efficient use of those dollars. Mm-hmm. What they're not thinking about is, well, maybe they got a bigger return on the first $50 that they invested, and the last $50 they're getting a little tiny return or no return at all.
Yep. There's the marginal benefit drops.
Exactly. So what the author encourages you to do as a business owner is, instead of thinking about your business as profit, your sales minus your costs equals your profit, he says put profit in front of everything and say your sales minus your profit is your costs, basically. Okay. So you're moving profit to the front of the equation.
It's a mindset shift.
Exactly. And he uses the example of like the small plate club, where if you go to like a buffet, you know, they give you small plates as opposed to big plates, because they know that if they give you big plates, you're going to put on a bunch of food. And then when you get to your table, you may eat more, or you may
waste more,
or you may waste more. So what he says is, like, just like a buffet gives you a small plate, as a business owner, you should have a small plate, which is your costs, right? These are your costs. All of the food on the buffet, that's maybe your income, but your plate is your cost. So you go there and so what you do in his equation is you set up a bank account where all of your income comes in, and then automatically there's a draw, which is your profit every month. So all you're left with is a small pool that you can spend on any costs or any reinvestments, right? And we started actually doing this at a couple of our businesses. Before, what was happening was all the income would come in, the general manager could spend it and do whatever they want with it. And we said, this isn't working. We're just not so sure that it's the most efficient use of our capital. So instead, what we do is we know approximately how much costs every business has every month, and everything else we sweep. So we sweep every dollar of profit out to us. And then if the general manager or the president needs a little more capital, we sit down, we have a conversation.
They have an option to raise their prices or reduce other costs, or
they can raise their prices, they can reduce costs. They can always come back to us as well. You know, like we can always put in a little more money, but it's a psychological shift, which I think has been really powerful in our businesses.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I don't know about you, but my mind and my mindset and my strategies is evolving very quickly. We're around a lot of smart people. We put ourselves out there. We get people critiquing our ideas because we're very public about what we talk about.
Yeah.
And we just surround ourselves with smart people that are not afraid to tell us when they disagree with us. What's something on business, capital allocation, hiring, that you look back on you in 2019 or 18 when you started Enduring, or even when you were an entrepreneur at the beginning, if we want to relate more to the position that more people listening to this might be in today? What's something that you look back on and you're just cringe?
Oh my God. So many things. So many things. All
right, let me ask you another question. You got out of college in what year?
2012.
Okay, same year as I did. You go back to 2012 and you know what you know now.
Yeah.
How long would it have taken you to get to where you are today? Net worth wise, profit wise, company equity value, all these different things. How much quicker could you do it? I think I could do it in a third the time.
Yeah.
Just knowing where I was just not working in the high leverage areas.
Yeah.
What are some of these eye-opening things that kind of make you think about?
So it's been about a little over 12 years from college. I think.
Never had a W-2?
Yes, never worked for anybody. I'm unemployable.
Yeah.
I think I could probably get to where we are today in about 6 years.
Okay.
You know, there's a certain amount of, even with the knowledge that we have, network building, reputation building.
Time is really on your side. The flywheel just takes time to build.
Yeah, exactly. And that has started to compound in those last 5 years that we've been working on this. And I think we couldn't shortcut all of that, but we could shortcut much of it.
I think maybe you're right. I'm about 50, maybe 50% as well.
Yeah. You know, one thing that I really admire about you is I'm watching you get into the business buying game. You know, is this the first business you're buying?
This will be the first one.
Okay. And
we merged with an SEO agency. It was technically a purchase of a book of business for $500,000
Right.
when we started Bold SEO.
I do remember that now.
But that is the only acquisition I've made. I've never sold any assets aside from that first student storage business.
Yeah. So I've been able to ride kind of shotgun with you on this business purchase so far. And
Yeah, as soon as you were the first call when I got the deal agreed upon verbally.
yeah. And what I really admire about you is I'm seeing you operate. I'm seeing you go into a practice that you're not really familiar with and how you do it, right? So you're reaching out to me, you're reaching out to other friends, you're getting information. You don't have any concern about, oh, is this person going to think I'm stupid, right? You're a super smart guy with a very successful business. You could easily think like, oh, I shouldn't be sharing this or asking these kind of silly questions, what may be perceived as silly questions.
Yeah.
Because like, oh, woe is me. Like, what if somebody thinks I'm silly, right? And candidly speaking, like when I was younger, I was caught in this like trap that I made for myself. I was worried about reaching out to people I didn't know. I was worried about going out for information. I was frankly worried about like posting on Twitter because I was like, I'm going to look silly. People are going to know that I don't know what I'm doing.
And there's the competition angle of maybe you're fueling competition if you're onto something.
For sure. Yeah, you're going to attract competition. And plus, like, who are these people? Like, why would they want to help me? And what has really changed for me since 2018, let's say, is I went from holding all my cards close to my chest, never talking about what I'm doing and just kind of plotting and making my plans.
You still hold things a lot closer to your chest than I do.
I do, for sure. Yeah. I think culturally, like, I'm Russian Jewish. I was raised to like not talk about my business. It's culturally like not okay to do so, basically. You know?
I personally think if you teased out a little bit of just how big you guys are working on and just how large some of these companies are and the scale of it all, I think that things would accelerate pretty fast for you.
Yeah.
But sometimes I wish that I didn't have every little thing out there too.
Yeah. When we wrote our first shareholder letter, this was like 2021 or something like that. I spent weeks like concerned and in knots and twisting myself back and forth, like whether I should share it publicly or not.
Okay.
Right. And I talked to my coach, I talked to friends, and I was kind of like, this isn't my style. Like, I don't like to share all this information. It exposes us to competition. Right. And eventually I did. And it started my kind of like Twitter growth journey.
Yep.
Right. I started talking about what we do, and doing so has really catapulted us. It attracted incredible CEOs to work with us. We've made at least 2 investments that came off of Twitter, and we've raised a bunch of capital through that resource as well. So
that's all 3 parts of the trifecta.
Yeah, it's totally changed our life, and I agree with you. Like, I think you're so much further on the spectrum of comfort with that act, and I think the closer I get to you, the more those 3 elements of the trifecta spin faster.
What I found out pretty early is that there is a humongous difference between seeing somebody write something on Twitter or a shareholder letter and saying, damn, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
To getting up to the ledge, rolling up your sleeves, and doing the work to make something happen.
Yeah.
And yes, I've attracted some people into the self-storage business because of my wildly open profit and loss statements that I share about my self-storage facilities and my acquisition strategy on social media. But the benefits that I have gotten through building trust with well-networked people, well-capitalized people, talented people, have drastically outweighed the handful of people out of the millions of people that I've reached online that have actually rolled up their sleeves and gotten to work and done it.
Yeah. Did you ever get pushback from your investors when you shared those
partners, investors, they kind of know me. That's how they found me. So no. My business partners along the way, up until a couple of weeks ago, I had a business partner be like, Nick, stop sharing so much.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly pushing back that, hey, this is going to help us all.
Yeah. I mean, it's a pretty novel concept. Most investors, most CEOs do not think like that, right? They think they're giving away their edge, their alpha by sharing that way. So it's a bit of a unique world.
Yep, it is. And I'm sure it will bite me.
Yeah.
You can't have your cake and eat it too.
Right.
But I'm just getting a hell of a lot of cake. So if somebody takes some, that's okay.
And you get bit a lot as an entrepreneur, so.
The biggest whales get speared. Is that what you said?
Yeah. The whales get speared when they come to the surface.
Okay.
Yeah. Because when they're pretty deep, you can't get them.
I love it. What's something in the last 6 to 8 months that you learned about attracting talent, looking at the difference between a good business and a bad business, that you would share this notably? And I'll go first. I think more about the phenomenally talented, phenomenally competent people who go out and raise venture capital money, and I talk to them about their capital stacks, I talk to them about their prospects, I talk to them about how much actual money would go in their pocket if they had a $100 million exit, or if they built a business that was making $1 million a month of cash flow. It's mind-blowing to me how unattractive that route is, and it just keeps getting more and more unattractive to me. I am able to bring people into the sweaty startup world that have been down the venture capital rabbit hole, and they've learned a ton about operating companies and doing these things that are important about running a business, and bringing them over to the dark side of cash flow is easy because it's so brutal as a venture-backed entrepreneur.
Yeah. You're bringing them over to the light side.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they hear that, holy shit, wait, I have a business that's worth $500 million, but I'm a W-2.
Yeah.
I don't have any cash flow coming in. Wait a second, you started a business 2 years ago that's sending you 40 grand a month? Why did I go raise money?
Yeah. I think venture capital for most people is a game of roulette. I don't want to play a game of roulette with my capital. I have plenty of friends that...
And when you say capital, you mean your time.
Time.
That's the main source of capital that we all
For
have,
sure.
is our energy and time.
Yeah. Most entrepreneurs will get 1 or 2 swings at a VC-backed bet, right? It's a 10, 15-year journey before they burnt out. I've had multiple friends build billion-dollar companies and walk away with a couple $1 million.
What?
Yeah. I've had 2 friends.
They built unicorns.
Yeah. By the time they got there, 15 years later, the amount of capital they raised.
They got 175 million of pref equity.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like a minimum return on their investors' capital. They got diluted a bunch. Yeah.
They got 3 co-founders.
Yep. Exactly.
But I guess the positive is that they got paid to get an MBA, and they're badasses. Like, some of these folks leaving that world can just run circles around most small business operators.
Oh, for sure. I mean, these are incredibly talented, incredibly hardworking executives. The only reason they're able to raise that money and build that business is because they're world class. Right? No, that doesn't happen otherwise.
Competition's brutal.
Yeah, it really is. I
thought about going and attracting, like you said earlier, that you like to go find people who have done it.
Yeah.
But is there a world where you and Xavier pull some of these people over and put them in your organizations and let them go?
I don't know. It's not the direction that we're heading in, because the types of businesses that we buy don't have a direct overlap with what they've done in the past. Not to say we won't do it, but it's not really where we're headed. Where we are headed, and kind of an answer to your question as well, is we've realized there's a pool of incredible investment professionals out there that have been doing this, basically doing what we do, right? Buying great businesses, growing them in a specific industry or a specific vertical.
So there's thousands of talented people in the private equity world, you're saying?
Yeah. There's thousands of talented people in the private equity world. They went to good schools. They went up through investment banking. They work at a great firm.
They rose to the top against all odds in those firms.
Yeah.
Because most people don't hack it in private equity.
Yeah. And now they're looking for a place where they can be a partner.
So they've done all this work to make other people wealthy.
They've done all this work to make other people wealthy, and now they're looking to kind of strike out on their own, right? But maybe they don't have the brand or the ability to raise the capital or the network. And if we compare what we do, which is the brand,
they need the trifecta. They need the 3 pillars.
Yeah, with their skill set, which is capital allocation, building relationships, sourcing businesses, and operating them. If we put those 2 things together, I think we can build something really interesting.
So that is a mind-blowing concept to me, what you just said. You're telling me there's somebody out there that knows how to source a business, buy a business, install a management team, and raise capital or debt or whatever it takes to close on the business. They know how to do all 4 of those things, and they're not multimillionaires and like already loaded.
They could be quite wealthy, but they don't quite have some of the pieces to the puzzle, right? So they can do...
Might not be able to go raise the capital.
Right.
Might not be able to build a management team.
Right. Exactly. They may not have the overlying brand. They may not have like a media company attached to their brand that is growing that brand and therefore calling more investors, right? And that's really where we can come in because we've established a good brand. We're still pretty early, but we have these flywheels like we've talked about.
And you can sit down with one of these talented people and say, hey, this is not going to happen overnight, but if we work together on sourcing quality businesses, building management teams, raising capital, closing deals for 5 years or 10 years, you're going to get phenomenally wealthy.
Right.
And you have that.
And when Blackstone started in the early days, they raised a huge fund. And almost immediately, they partnered with world-class operators in different industries. They brought in a guy to lead their real estate fund, and they went 50-50. They said, we'll pull up the capital, you lead the firm. And they did it in a few other industries as well, lending, public equities, et cetera.
And they found people who had done those things.
They found people who were world-class, who were still earlier in their career and wanted to spend 20 years building an empire. And ultimately, some of these businesses eclipsed the original Blackstone vision. Right? Like the real estate business is the biggest in the world. So I get excited about the ability to partner with world-class capital allocators and really give them a platform to build something of that scale.
And so you do this and you start to find these people. There's a power law of what businesses rise. Where does this put you 20 years from now? I mean, billions of dollars. This could be phenomenally big if you bet on some of the people and they turn out to be the right people.
Yeah, we try not to like think too far ahead. You know, I think for us, we're in an inevitable business, and every day we learn from what we're doing. We buy new businesses, we raise capital, we work with great talent, and all of those elements compound over time. So I don't know what it looks like 10 years or 20 years from now.
But basic math says that there's some pretty big possibilities.
It'll be better than today. Yeah, for sure. So that's what I'm really excited about. Do you have any regrets from your business journey?
I made some mistakes on how much equity I had in some of these early spinoffs after my private equity company. Mm-hmm. But they were amazing learning opportunities for me, and I very quickly corrected course on the next opportunity, so I won't really call them mistakes. Like I only own 15% of the best business in my portfolio, which is supportshepherd.com. 80% of my employees are overseas. It's changing the way that I do business by hiring these folks through Support Shepherd. I think Americans are getting harder and harder to hire, but I only own 15% of that company. Mm-hmm. So there's some things like that, but overall, I'm seeing more and more opportunities than ever. I'm getting in the room with more and more talented people, and the flywheel is picking up steam incredibly quickly.
I definitely see that.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about your journey.
And I'm going to make some mistakes.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to look back and there's going to be some super stressful situations that are just part of all this.
For sure.
It's hard. What we do is really hard.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have enough wins where there's a good chance things get really, really big. Like you said, I'm not going to predict where I'm at 20 years from now, but we're taking swings that have the chance to be really, really big.
Yeah. And I think if you just take swings over and over again and you're committed to dealing with the pain that comes with it sometimes, ultimately you get smarter, you get faster, your network grows, and everything becomes a little bit easier, which I've seen you do in just a matter of a year. A year ago, you were maybe a business owner of like 1 or 2 businesses, and now you own 10 businesses, all of which are very successful. And I can just see it has compounded and grown so fast already, but I can see that you were in the early stages even before your J curve really takes off.
It could get crazy.
Yeah, it will.
It could get crazy. I'm glad you're confident. I think it seems too good to be true. I got to pinch myself. I'm having so much fun. Yeah. I'm operating at a really high level, and I'm just more ambitious than ever. Like some people start to make a little money and they're just like, okay. And me, it's an insatiable appetite to bring more talented people and do more deals and get more people in the room and build more relationships and deploy more capital. And it's really fun. Your energy is incredible and it's super contagious. That's why I like to hang out with you, man. Right back at you, man. I mean, you've mentored me along the way already, and I'm sure me knowing you will save me a lot of headache. Yeah. On a lot of these mistakes that I know are around the corner. I go home after we hang out together and I'm like, I need to grow my business bigger. I need to go faster. I need to
be on Twitter more. I need to share all my lessons. Everything.
You need to work less?
Yeah, I need to work less. I need a much bigger family.
That is one thing that I'm trying to do is I want to work 10 hours a week.
Yeah.
And from 2017 to 2020, I probably worked 10 hours a week. I've sprinted to launch my private equity company at the beginning of 2020. 2021 and 2022, I worked 15 or 20 hours a week. And then 2023, early, I started sprinting, and I'm still sprinting.
You're working hard.
I'm working a lot, yeah. But I'm doing only super high leverage activities. No customers have my access to me. Yeah. No employees outside of my partner operators have my email and get on my calendar. So I'm working on the highest leverage shit, which is bringing smart people together to chase buying businesses, growing businesses, and keeping the flywheel going. There was nothing more exciting than I got on a call with WebRun, AdRhino, and Bold SEO. Those three companies, their job is to get small businesses more customers. Mm-hmm. They're working with all my companies. And I got on a Zoom call, and I just was in the background listening. And my three operators, who are all partners in those businesses, on that one call, they together, without me, decided that, hey, we have way too many synergies. I want to learn how to sell your shit. Mm-hmm. You need to learn how to sell my stuff. We all need to learn each other's businesses. Let's get a call going every week. We're going to learn each other's businesses. We're going to sell each other's stuff. We'll worry about the compensation later. Yeah. Let's start sending each other a ton of business. Let's start sharing employees. Let's start sharing resources so that we can become the next MetaLab. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at the leads that are coming. I'm looking at the revenue growth. I'm looking at what's happening. I'm like, wow, these are hard businesses. These are agency businesses. And between those three companies, they're all less than a year old. They all had together that 250K a month of revenue.
It's badass.
And those people are talented. Yeah. And they're just ready to go. Yeah. That's exciting to me, that knowing that I'm not doing anything.
Yep.
And they're going to start to collaborate and grow what is going to become a trifecta of agencies that can grow businesses, which fits right into what I want to do, because I want to grow business. Why have you not kind of thought about how these businesses can all work together and how they can feed off your personal brand?
Yeah, it's a good question. We do have a pretty good online presence, Twitter, newsletter, etc.
But you really only lean on it for operators and capital, not customers.
Right, exactly. We don't really have any businesses yet. We have a couple now, but we haven't really had any businesses that are good for our kind of audience.
What if,
except for Scribe, by the way.
What if Enduring bought 20% of AdRhino, WebRun, and Bold all at the same time? Yeah. And you rolled that in, got really comfortable with the team and the offer, and then rolled that out to help grow your entire portfolio?
Yeah, it's something to think about. Like, we've definitely looked at agencies, paid
gotta be the right one. They gotta be really good at what they do.
For sure. Yeah, so we've really looked at those. At the end of the day, like, we couldn't really get over the hump of them being kind of commodity businesses. I think your unique advantage is your audience is so big that you're making it rain. I know you like joke that you don't do anything for these businesses, but you're doing 80% of what an agency needs, because every agency business, like, they are in an all-out knife fight trying to get the next business, right? And you're just making it rain for them. So you are doing the most important part, actually. That's
my team is doing it.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Cool.
Dope, man. This was great. I'm glad we did this.
It's glad to be here.
Yeah.
And that's it for this week's episode of Boring Businesses. I'm your host, Sieva Kozinsky. Thank you for watching or listening today. Any resources we mentioned during the show, we'll make sure to link in the show notes or below the video. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, please leave me a review. It really helps me learn, and it allows other people to discover the podcast as well. Thanks again, and make sure you hit the subscribe or follow button if you haven't already. I'll see you next time.